So now let's talk about MVPs, or minimum viable products, right? So when you start designing the application that you're going to create, you are going to use something called a wireframe. So all the wireframe is, you can literally use a piece of paper and sketch out what you want your app to visually look like, and basically try to figure out the flow of how your app will work. You'll then go to prototyping and rapid prototyping, where you'll use something most likely like Canva, where essentially what you'll do is you'll take that wireframe, but you'll actually start to make things clickable. There won't be a database backend or an actual API call, but you'll be able to click on things, or users will be able to click on things, again, so they get the feel of what it will be like to use your application in a more real environment. Past that, you're then going to need to look at building your MVP. So what the MVP is it's called the minimum viable product. And this is going to be your product basically at its simplest, and you are going to push it out so that you can actually start getting users to use your application and figure out what it is they like about your application, what they wish your application had, the problems with your application, so on and so forth. So one of the biggest problems that coders have, and especially like founders have when they start building their application, is the whole question of, will anybody care once you've finished your app, right? So you sit there, you spend years of your life to build something, whether it's for a startup company or whether it's internal for the corporation that you work for, and then you're proud, you deploy it to the world, and then the big question is, literally, does anybody care? It's interesting, I was talking to a student recently where he had just spent a lot of time building out a project and basically deployed it into the enterprise, and literally nobody used it. Nobody used it. And so that's going to be one of the biggest questions you have, right? When you're developing your app, a big thing that's going to be going through your mind is like, how much can you charge for this app? Can you charge $100 a month, or $50 a month, or $5 a month? What you might find out is that if you actually create your app, people are literally not willing to use it for free. So that's a big question to try to figure out. Even if your product was free, would people be willing to buy it? And that's gonna be a hit to your ego, but what you might find out is even if your product is free, nobody cares. And that's a big issue, especially in the modern world when we talk about things like monetizing our applications. Will it be a subscription service? Will it be sponsored or ad paid for? Or will it be crowdfunded, right? So even if you're thinking, well, okay, I don't need people to pay me $25 a month for the app once I've created it, I'm gonna pay for it through advertising. Well, if nobody actually uses your app, then you're not going to get any advertising money. So what you want to do is you want to create an MVP, a minimum viable product, as quickly as possible. And so this is an actual product that you are going to be deploying to your users. So you are going to need the database backend, you're going to need the file stores, it is going to need to be deployed into whatever environment it needs to be deployed into. But basically, when you build this, what you want to do is you want to create the simplest version of your product as possible, right? So at the end of the day, you want to have 100 features on your product. You want all this amazing functionality. You want it to be all pretty and beautiful and all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about that when you're thinking about the minimum viable product. Think about your product and think about what are the absolute core components of your product and what it should be doing, right? And then basically what you do is you build those core components, and then you build a user interface that's good enough. Don't make it complete garbage. It does need to be good enough, but you create a user interface that's good enough. It can be basically almost plain HTML, even without very much CSS. It can be just black and white, really, right? Craigslist era type coding. And what you want to do then is you want to create this so that you can start getting it into the hands of your users to find out what they like and what they dislike about your product. The interesting thing is when you are inventing things and when you are creating things, the things that people like And the things that people hate may literally not be what you think it is, right? Like you may create the app and you may see something that's a quirk, right? This is a quirk, this is a problem. Just as soon as I get around to it, I will eliminate that from this application. And then what you find out is that the users like it for some reason. They're like, oh no, I actually like that thing. Keep that thing there. That's one of the things that I find valuable. And then other stuff, right? Stuff that you're willing to spend hours or days or years trying to code and make functional, people just literally just do not care about. Again, think about this with applications that you use, right? If you go to any software as a service or again, any other kind of application, look at that application and think about all the time and energy that went into all the different features and functionality of the application that you use. And then think about the 3 things that you use with that application. You think about this like with a word processor, right? When I use a word processor, what do? I use the headings, I use the fonts, I change the font sizes, and I add images, right? You go to this word processing software, and they've been developing this stuff for decades at this point, right? Lots of time and energy went into producing this stuff. And what do? You type, you add some images, and that's what most people do. And so that's what you want to create. And then once you can actually get people using your product, and then you can start basically asking them what they like and what they dislike about the product, then you can start figuring out what the next features and functionalities that you should add to the product are so that you do not waste time and resources. Do remember, whether you're coding for a company or whether you're coding for yourself, you only have so many resources. You only have so much time and you only have so much money. So when you're building things, you want to build the things that are going to give you the most bang for the buck. So if you can get 20 or 30 people using your minimum viable product, and then they can start giving you advice about what they like, what you'll find out then is what functionality is most important to them and what functionality is least important to them, and then you can focus on what they actually care about. Now, the important thing to understand about the MVP is your UI UX might be slightly better than crap, but your security should not be. This is one of the things that gets overlooked by a lot of people, especially when they're spinning up startups, is that for the database solution they use or the file store solution they use, many times they will do that as halfway as they do their user interface, right? And so one of the things you need to be thinking about is that your users are going to be giving you information. They're going to be giving you things like the email addresses and all other kinds of personally identifiable information. So when you do build out your MVP, you need to make sure things like the database are secure. Make sure that you use a secure service if you do not know how to spin up a database server on your own. Don't use things like SQLite. So if you're here for Silicon Dojo, we use SQLite for a lot of our projects. If you're going to be storing any kind of data that should be secure, most likely don't use SQLite. Use Postgres or use MySQL. Use something like a service, database service from DigitalOcean, something like that, so that is more secure. Make sure that you're using SSL. So if you're communicating things over the internet, SSL is for encryption. Make sure that you have encryption in transit. Depending on what exactly is going on with your project, you might need to make sure that you have encryption at rest. So make sure that their data is going to be secure, because if you get users to use your system and then it gets hacked, that is going to destroy the credibility of you and your product, which would be a bad thing. Most of the security isn't really that big a deal at the end of the day, or it's not really that difficult to deploy at the end of the day. So you just need to make sure that you take the time and energy to concern yourself about things like security. So your CSS skills don't necessarily have to be the best in the world, but do make sure that your platform is secure. Now, the final thing with the MVP is once you get users to start actually using your product and you start getting that information back, for any user or customer that is prominent, ask them if you can use their name and say that they are a user of the application that you've created. So one of the big things with trying to sell any product, again, whether it's a startup company or whether it's in your organization, is the whole bandwagon approach, telling folks, other people really love this product, so you will too. So one of the things that can validate your product in the eyes of other people is simply by you being able to say that other folks are actually using your application and they enjoy using it. So again, if you're trying to be a startup company and sell your product to the wider world, if you can get people in a couple of decent sized companies to actually use your product, asking, hey, can I say that your company is using this product, and then slap that on your webpage. Hey, guess what? Intel is using our product. I mean, it's 3 people, 3 interns in the marketing department, but hey, they work for Intel now, don't they, right? Or again, if it's in your company, if you can go out and if you can get some of the executives to use your product, or if you can get some of the prominent people within different teams to use their product, as you go out and you start talking with other people, it'd be like, oh yeah, well, Bob has been using, the application we created for the past month, and he swears it's made his work more efficient. So you can go talk to him, but yeah, we've actually been using Bob, and Bob really likes the product, so you probably will too. That's another valuable thing for going out there to actually get buy-in to whatever it is that you've created, to get more people to use your product, so that you can actually, again, get more of that feedback back. And essentially what happens with that minimum viable product is you get people to use it, you learn what they like, what they dislike, you use agile project management, it's called agile project management, to continually improve the product. And it's amazing how fast you can go from a pretty crappy, 1 or 2 function app to something with a lot of functionality, simply by, again, going through the process and building on the initial MVP. So the idea with the MVP is an actual, real, working product that is as small as possible, as feature restricted as possible, just to get users to actually start using it, so that you can start to get the traction going, to show whether or not people care about your product. And again, one of the most important things, even if your product is free, would anybody buy it? Which they might not.